very intense being connected to this. I'm definitely going to knock something over at some point, and I apologise in advance if that's what happens. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. My name's Gemma Mitchell. I'm the Managing Director of The Mix Global. We are a full-service qual and quant agency, and we do lots of work in FMCG and other categories as well. So we do lots of things around retail, sports, brands, lifestyle, all the way down to kind of foundational societal things as well in terms of mental health. So we research basically where people are, we'll talk to people, and that's our kind of angle on everything that we do. We are really interested in the no and low sector. It's a passion project for a huge amount of the team at the agency, actually, just to be able to see and support the category coming to life and what can happen. So the report that we put together with Club Soda is focused on a number of different research inputs, and particularly the work then that the team were doing at the Brighton Festival last year, where we did a lot of consumer interviews, but also worked with people who are, well, you guys, the brand owners, and other people in the sector as well, just to really understand some of the challenges, some of the complexities, and what's really going on from a consumer point of view. For us, what we're really excited about in terms of the journey of the category is it's now time to really talk about audiences. The category have been doing such an incredible job at getting product into places, but as you develop as a category, you start to really focus on what your brand positioning is, because it's the only way that you're going to start to get cut through in what is becoming an incredibly noisy, active, but also quite challenging to navigate category. So it's time to get really excited about people and maybe a little bit less excited about your product. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. People champion over here. So I'm going to really awkwardly stretch back and chat you through it. I'm not going to talk in detail. There's lots of text. This is the report. These are not presentation slides. Everyone who's here today and then some, if you've shared your email address with the team, then you'll get a copy of the report. Our contact details are at the end, and we'd be delighted to take questions, or if you've got teams back at the ranch that you'd be really interested to share it with, then just let us know. This is very much stuff that we just want to get into the category to support everybody. Exactly as Lucy mentioned, we know that there's just a massive gold rush. In the UK alone, there's 210, I think at the last count, new products launched in the last 10 years, which is a huge amount of products kind of storming into the category. And it has been incredibly product-led to date, as everyone looks to kind of gain salience with consumers, maybe through the creation of the best analog products, or that extra challenging thing of actually trying to get something that's completely new as a grown-up drink into the marketplace. And the demand is definitely there. We know that the category growth is set to be at least 8% by 2025. So we know that consumers are definitely hungry for work to happen in the space. But as the category matures, it's time for brands to really start thinking audience first, to be able to maximise those points of differentiation in what is a busy category. You don't need to know about us. We collaborated. There's a few of us. So the big one, obviously, is that mindful drinking is now happening at scale. As I'm sure everyone in this room is fully aware, of course, there's the big shift towards physical and mental well-being, especially post-COVID. People are really interested in starting to explore new things. And really significantly, from a marketing and brand point of view, we know that there's a huge appetite within that Gen Z audience who are coming through and just starting to understand the alcohol category in its entirety, with 1 in 5 Gen Z claiming to be fully teetotal, and a number of them being much more curious about what else is available. It's definitely an interesting space to be in, because you know that there's a huge groundswell of younger audiences coming through for you. It's that really interesting thing as well, which I'm sure, again, everyone in the room is aware of, just about that need for control now, especially in younger audiences, and that's where the motivation for maybe moderation or more mindful drinking really comes from, is that sense of control, and you'll see that repeated through the audiences that we're going to share. Awareness of the category does continue to grow, but anyone who is on the marketing and brand side will know that magical funnel, what is going on in the funnel. And right now, conversion is our biggest weakness. So although there's a huge awareness of what's going on in the category, actually just getting people to try some stuff is still pretty difficult. And that's the challenge that I think we all need to be aware of, is just getting people to experiment and explore and actually challenge themselves to enjoy something in the category. And as we say, it all absolutely starts with people. So the current non or free language, again, for those of you all in on your kind of behavioural theory, it's really difficult, because it basically, the entire category plays into the notion of loss aversion right now. It's all about taking something away from a product. So why am I going to pay the same, or why am I going to invest maybe even a little bit more in a product that you're telling me has something less in it than what I might naturally consume? So it's really difficult. If you're looking at like spending 25 bottles on a bottle of gin, or a bottle of something that claims to be something ginish, then what am I going to spend my money on? And if I'm taking something away, then ultimately it's just liquid in a bottle, right? And that's the kind of consumer journey and the rationalization that people are going through. So we do have a challenge in terms of that. How do we combat that loss aversion right now? And you do that by starting with people, and actually there's a huge amount of emotional tensions where brands can really play a significant role about dialing into occasion, what people are actually most tense and challenged about, and why people are in the category in the first place. So there's loads of rich emotional territory that we can start to get after. I think what's really important to recognise is that the category to date has really played in this quite binary space around audiences. Either you drink or you don't drink, and that's it, plain and simple. And I think especially around kind of investment and actually talking to people outside of the category, there is so much interest actually for people that are moderating, and we have to all acknowledge that fact that people are switching in and out at a really high frequency, and that is how we're going to unlock massive growth in the space. So it's time to stop only talking to people that are not drinking. We just need to talk to grown-ups basically and entice them into the category in quite a major way. So let's take a look at that a little bit more closely in terms of what we mean by the audiences now being not binary. So as Yusi kind of mentioned, there's loads of different motivations as why people end up in the non-alc category, or indeed in just not drinking while they're in the pub. There are intrinsic motivations and there are extrinsic motivations. We did a really interesting bit of work a little while ago about what the path to purchase is in the on-trade particularly, and the number of barriers there are is crazy, especially if you have much more intrinsic motivations. And this is what we all need to really focus on. So extrinsic motivations are all the classics. I'm pregnant, I'm driving, you know, all of those reasons. I'm on antibiotics, the perfect excuse for anyone who's not trying to drink because nobody knows, and so you just get to say it. And that notion of nobody's going to question what you're up to. You're just like, this fact, good, understand, enjoy your Coke. But the intrinsic motivations are the ones that are on the rise, and these are so much harder for people to talk about. What happens if you've just got a really big day the next day? What happens if you just don't, Saturday mornings are super precious to you because that's when you get to hang out with your kids and you just want to feel a bit fresher? Trying to explain that in the pub while everyone's just having a pint around you is really difficult from a person point of view. You don't really want to go into the ins and outs of I just want to be a bit little healthier, and everyone kind of goes on at you, and then everyone's like, just have one. And that's the kind of scenario that lots of the intrinsic motivations are under attack with. It's really difficult. So if people are already in that kind of open space of that behaviour change, that we just need to acknowledge there are so many barriers socially within the construct of the on-trade, within the construct of the off-trade, that actually really stands in their way. So first of all, there are three types of approaches to alcohol. So there are people that definitely do regularly drink alcohol, and these are people who are in the non-alc category. Of course, there are our kind of legacy audience of the people who don't drink alcohol at all. And then there's people that are actively trying to just reduce the amount of alcohol that they're taking. And audience one and audience three are the ones that we're going to focus on mainly in this session today. As we mentioned, so in terms of established behaviours and emerging behaviours, the established behaviours are the ones that we're all kind of probably super aware of, and they are definitely from the legacy audiences. So maybe you're cutting down because of physical or mental health concerns. Maybe you're interested in it just due to faith reasons or for specific health reasons. Or you might be in the category just because of a history of problematic drinking and you're trying to explore that space. But there's loads of really interesting emerging behaviour that's coming out now. So people that are maybe conscious of alcohol in their lives, people that have started to maybe moderate consumption, so they're not saying completely no, but they're just kind of aware that they might want to dial things up and down. They definitely really want to participate in those social occasions. They're really socially driven. So that scenario that I just described earlier of having to explain to somebody why you're moderating is really difficult because you basically don't want to draw attention to yourself. You just want to be participating in the occasion. That's really difficult for people. So we see that emerging behaviour come through. Of course, there's the big trend towards wellness, and lots of people that are looking for things to either dial up or down their physical and mental wellness. So they might be kind of messing about with their dietary intake, loads of fad diets and stuff out there at the moment. So there's lots of stuff going on there as well. And of course, there's people that just want to give it a try, which is really exciting. There's enough groundswell in the market now that stuff is popping up all over the place. And if they see something that looks like a tasty drink, there are now a bunch of people that are really interested in actually trying it. And that's super exciting, I think, in terms of the growth of the category. So ultimately we need to look at redefining the landscape. So we've uncovered that there's lots of different kinds of drinkers that are dabbling in the category. And it's really key to understand as brands in the market just exactly what people are then looking for and to see how we can dial up and down those emotions. So I'm not going to read all these out, but I'm going to introduce them slowly but surely. So when you read the report, this is Michael. I love Michael. Everyone giggled, but I love Michael. So we have the consumer name, and then really importantly, we've got what their key drivers are in the market. You'll never be able to read this all the way up the back. Enjoy it when you get to read it up close. So we've got also their key reasons for being in the category. And we've just painted a bit of a portrait as to why people might have arrived there already. So we've got our aging moderators. They're predominantly looking because something has happened and they have a health concern. There's probably a bunch of people around them telling them to take it easy. And they're like, oh, fine. So Guinness Zero, for example, is doing a great job for them. Heineken Zero is really good as well. So they're definitely in that space where they're just looking for those replicas and those switch outs. But they are definitely kind of one of our more established audiences. Again, in the established audience space, we have people that are on their sober journey. And so we see here that they're looking for social inclusion, physical wellness, elevated drinking experience, and also mindfulness. So they're taking their sober journey takes into account of maybe a history of problematic drinking. It's quite an emotional process, therefore, to find out what your drink is, and not, again, just to be sat drinking a lemonade or a Coke. And there's that real focus on mental wellness. So again, the kind of replicas are doing a good job. So Lucky Saint, Cardino, Carlenio, and Lears are doing a really strong job for them. Then, of course, you've got your non-drinkers who are maybe not drinking for personal religious reasons, pregnancy reasons, and again, they're part of the established audience. So we know about these guys. The more exciting guys are, of course, then our more emerging audiences. So first of all, we have our curious drinker. These guys are really exciting because, again, they're already playing in the category, but they're just seeing stuff out there and they're willing to give it a go. It's really interesting, I think, just to recognise that fact that not everybody wants to drink alcohol all the time, so they might not even be thinking that they want a non-alcoholic drink. They're just almost on default, especially in the on-trade, as to what they're choosing. So if they see something else that looks kind of tasty and delicious, they're definitely going to be deviated to that, because really they're not up for having a big night out, but what else do you drink apart from gin and tonic? But it's just that sort of default space. This is really difficult to do because you're obviously looking at behaviour change, but they're kind of up for it. It's an open door that we can push on to get curious drinkers to really enjoy the category. So there's lots of work that we can do there around point of sale and just making things look absolutely delicious and serve. Then, of course, we've got our moderators. So these are the guys that are moving in and out of the category. Again, for all of the established audiences, they are tricky because their comparison point is alcohol. So it's that point that you have to really prove to them that this is something really worth having, that it's grown up, that it's delicious, that it's not going to take away from their experience. So for all three of the established audiences, product and serve are incredibly important. So as I say, the moderators are moving in and out of the category. They're definitely moving around for health conscious reasons. They want to actively avoid the effects of alcohol. So they're kind of thinking about what they're doing the next day, but they don't want to miss out on that social occasion. So again, Lucky Saint are doing a great job for them, as are Guinness, Moretti, kind of all of the analogue ones that are moving across. So they're looking for replicas. It's all about social inclusion and peace of mind for them. And then for those of you who are maybe on the more functional drink side, we've got the maximizers. And we all have at least one friend who is this person. So this person is the person who basically nothing goes into my body is a temple. And therefore absolutely is that you, Laura?
Just maximizing that.
So they're really looking for maybe stuff that actually has that additional benefit to them. So maybe if you've got anything around things that are just got an extra functional benefit to them, they're definitely looking for that space. So they're all about the social inclusion. They're sort of interested in the replicas, but for example, the dominance of sugar in the category is definitely something that they'll be aware of because their body is a temple. And so you can really play for them in terms of that space around that more holistic space, but also absolutely all about product and what goes into the product to make it really work. Loads of text here, enjoy the read as you go. So the summary is, as we say, we got 6, there's 3 established audiences and 3 emerging audiences, and they are all looking for something slightly different. I think the biggest one that I want to draw people's attention to is just the importance of the elevated serve for the curious drinker in terms of how you get people actually to start to trial and on board, whereas the moderators and the maximizers kind of know what they're doing. They're starting to kind of navigate the category and they understand what's going on. So those are our 6 audiences. And our favourite audiences are definitely the emerging audiences. We think there's the moderator audience is going to be massive for the category, and it's something that we all need to stay really, really mindful of. You're not actually wanting to talk to people that are necessarily in that binary space. Talk to the people that are maybe choosing one drink for their first drink and dialing back into something that's maybe a non-alc space and dialing back in, because that's where the volume will come from. And that'll get the on-trade super excited as well, because it means that people are spending lots of money and staying at the bar. What we can see loads of, especially in the UK, the damage that the on-trade are doing in terms of just seeing people walk out because there's nothing decent to actually keep them in. They're fundamentally, as we all know, there's only so many Diet Cokes you can drink in a night before you're just a bit done. And so it's that sense of creating that really adult space and supporting the on-trade into become somewhere where grown-ups can gather to socialise and drink alcohol second, rather than it leading with alcohol is the job to be done, we think, in the on-trade. There's a couple of different paths to purchase that's well worth being aware of in terms of flavour. So people who have been in the category, so people with previous experiences of alcohol, they have a slightly different journey in. So they've got maybe more interest in legacy brands that are doing replicas because they are ultimately looking for like a gin and tonic or a whiskey and coke. They're then quite interested maybe in dabbling in more new to world brands before they start to explore the niche brands. People without any experience in alcohol, they're much more on the sweeter end of the palate, which is, again, well worth kind of being aware of. So they're usually drinking water or soft drinks. So fancy juices and soft drinks has always been their way into the non-alc category. Then they're interested in kind of non-replica flavours. So just from a palate point of view, what else is kind of interesting out there that isn't like a Fanta or a Coke? And then they're much more interested in those more complex serves. So again, it's quite interesting across those different audiences, just the flavour journey that people are looking for and potentially on. So that is it. That is the report. I think our biggest thing is I think there's just a massive opportunity in acknowledging the fact that actually you need to frame yourselves as competing with alcohol, basically. So it's not just about capitalising on when people are in the space. Actually, what you're trying to do is steal massive share from alcohol, because that's where the moderators are growing. And I think you'll see a massive groundswell in audiences if we focus on the emerging rather than the established. And that's it. Is everyone a little bit hot? Shall we ask Laura to open the door? Yes, that's us. Very, very happy to take Q&A. What you'll also find at the end of the report is just a little bit of guidance from a brand management point of view as to what we would suggest you do next. So there is stuff around defining what your consumer attention is, genuinely find an insight rather than just make a good product, because there's loads of different emotional ways into the category for consumers. Then work out actually where you want to sit in terms of that journey of discovery, and then really work on highlighting different elements. So what's compelling with serve? What can you highlight from a craft point of view? What's then relevant in terms of placement? And then you may not need to offer functional benefits to be able to capitalise on those really significant audiences. So all of the steps forward are there, and as I say, very happy to talk at large about what to do from a brand point of view. That's us.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to close the door because every now and again there's a big crunch of traffic and people get stuck and they all start beeping their horns. So there's a lot going on around here. But has anyone got any questions or any thoughts to add in?
Hi. That was fantastic. Thank you. What's your take on the role that functional drinks play outside of maximising? Because that's something. So we have a non-alcoholic wine with no functional benefits.
Yeah.
And I think a product like 3 Spirit is absolutely fantastic. But I can't work out where those drinks play with people, all the consumers who might see that as a bit more left field.
I think, to be honest, like there's a huge opportunity within the functional drink space, but it's also super confusing for a whole bunch of consumers. It's kind of like do one thing and do it really well first. So I think there is a great niche audience who are 100% willing to pay more for stuff that, as I say, that kind of really maximising everything that they ingest. I think there's probably, it's not to stop developing those products, like it probably will be of interest once the category continues to establish. But right now, the main question on consumers' minds is, what the hell is this? So you don't want to be like, what the hell is this? Plus, what is that? And what does that do to me? And so it's that sort of like, let people onboard themselves first before you kind of nudge them into a different direction for those bigger audience pools, is what I would suggest.
There's definitely an age thing there, because when people come to our CBD shelf, the young ones are like, oh yeah, CBD cool, and older ones are like, what? Some scary drug thing, I'm not going to even talk about that. It's really strange.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, Jim, a quick question. You talked earlier about taking away, and we kind of go back between non-alcoholic, alcohol-free, non-alcoholic. Maybe obviously Laura and Lucy have a view on this. What is your kind of, based on your research, the best terminology to use? Non-alcoholic, alcohol-free?
This is the holy grail.
This
This is the question that everyone asks. If only someone could come up with a good term for alcohol-free, and I don't think there is one.
Yeah, and we're a bit schizophrenic. We have non-alcoholic and then we use alcohol-free, and sometimes we like one or the other. Is there, I know there's no perfect science, but would you have any recommendation or advice?
I don't think so. I think it's really difficult as a category, isn't it? Because you are currently positioned as something that is still, it's like what we're really missing is that universal term of, this is a drink for grown-ups, and it does or doesn't have alcohol. And it's like, it's such a shame that we're kind of rowing back against what the presumption is, which is alcohol is for grown-ups and anything else is a soft drink. And I think therefore you have to set yourself apart from alcohol. So I think to use them interchangeably is kind of fine, because it is ultimately the same thing. But I think it's that sort of sense, what do you do from a product benefit point of view? How do you describe taste? What can you do about flavour? What basically makes you better than Belvoir? Because otherwise you end up in that space, especially if you're in the spirit space. So I think it's constantly refining, almost like what language can we encourage people to think about from an adult palate point of view. So unfortunately, yeah, there's definitely I've got no decent answer.
People now put in, like, I don't know if it came from America, but just NA, it sounds obvious.
Yeah.
But I think as a poster, I'm just getting bored of ever writing non-alcoholic or whatever. It's just a long word. And I've dabbled with NA a little bit. I don't know.
I think you could. I mean, there's probably loads of.
Non has this negative thing.
Yeah, massively.
Non means there's something missing from it, and we're not a category that's missing anything.
Yeah.
In some cases, we're de-alcoholized. We make an alcohol and we take it out, so it's even more complex.
Yeah.
So it's just this non-word, which I'm very uncomfortable with, and we kind of.
Yeah, I agree. And as we say, it plays so dramatically into classic behaviour theory of that loss aversion space. So you're having to do so much work to kind of get back over what you're reducing. If you're not playing in the analog space, so it's just like if you're not trying to do like a non-alcoholic gin or a non-alcoholic rum, it's a little bit easier. But how else do you communicate it apart from making sure that people do understand that it's 0%? So I think, yeah, going into the NA shortcut will definitely work for some audiences. So I think moderators will probably understand that really well. Definitely people that are more established in the category will understand that really clearly. I think it's kind of, it's more important probably to talk to our kind of curious drinkers more explicitly, just so that they're aware of what they're sampling in an excited way. But again, it's almost like in a comms hierarchy, weirdly, it's needing to come like second or third now rather than first, because that's not necessarily what people are looking for. People are looking for tasty drinks, and then they're looking to guarantee that it's non-alcoholic. And I wonder if we can experiment a little bit as a category around what we put out first, rather than leading with the loss aversion.
I think that's a really valuable point, because in terms of the sort of classic pain of loss versus benefit of gain, is usually people think it's going to be worse what they're going away from to what they're going to. In that hierarchy of messaging, non-alcoholic shouldn't be the first.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah,
it should
I
be
think
lower
so.
down, and it should be going more to what, like sensorial, appetite.
Yeah. And it's like we can steal lots of language from the category, but it is that sort of sense. I mean, what's so interesting is you're up against a category that actually doesn't really describe what it tastes like. So if you ask somebody what a gin and tonic tastes like, not a clue. Like people just, there's almost zero language. So you're also having to just find like description language that people aren't even used to. So there's a really interesting thing around what consumers are even having to kind of process to work out what they want to drink.
I have a vision for the future, and this was crystallized to me. We went to a team meal in Nando's the other night. Stay with me. At Nando's, so you order I'll have my chicken or my bean burger, and then you select the spiciness rating. So in the same way, you could go to a bar and say, could I have an IPA please at 3% ABV or 5% or whatever you select. So it's like drink first, ABV second, and you have like a whole range of everything. and that's where we'll hopefully end up one day.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
and
that's definitely
we are in a
interesting.
different space where the research that we did, and also the CAM research, and CAM are here as well, shows that taste is now a really big driver. So actually, one of the very big hurdles that we had at the beginning, when everyone thought it was all going to taste as shit as Calibre, has moved on, and taste is something that you can really focus on.
I think there's a wider bit of work to do as well with also people like retailers, because when we talk to them, they're so segmented. No,
Yeah.
you go in the non and low section. It's just like, well, actually, no, there's a whole wider sort of spectrum than that. They're just so single-minded. The same in bars, you know, it's almost like putting on the kids menu down at the bottom. So I think that's why organisations this is so important, just to try and challenge those perceptions of just putting us all into.
I totally agree, because I think especially in retail, like you should be able to double park it, because some people will navigate the category through, I know I'm going to drink non-alc and therefore. But what about those moderators? Like if you're searching for a rum and you actually see something that looks tasty and delicious, you should have that opportunity as well.
Absolutely. For our brand, our biggest selling months are December, which is obviously that plays into the fact that there's moderators buying alcohol.
What's your brand?
Yeah.
Naughty. So buying it alongside. So
Yeah.
it's not the kind of just people who don't want to drink anymore. It's the
Yeah.
moderators, and that's, you know.
I mean, that's so
value.
interesting that that's where you're seeing your peaks, because you can get that sense as well, like if you're a host, just the ability to offer something different. You know what I mean? I mean, that's such a huge role for all of us, right? But people are definitely in that space about something new and exciting. So yeah, it's really fascinating that that's when you see your retailer
Which
uptick.
is where there's some collaborative action that can be taken around how we carry on growing this market, which isn't about brand, but around more of that language,
Yeah.
calling out wholesalers, which is my favourite thing, and all that sort of stuff.
Emma.
Hi, I was just wondering whether we had looked at all about where they're discovering like new products and brands and how they're discovering them. I think that's a big thing on my kind of mind, is like where are the spaces, what are the places? Is it word of mouth? Is it trade? Like where are the
We did a little bit of surveying with the Club Soda membership, and I think I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was basically online,
right.
social media, Club Soda, supermarkets, and then recommendations from friends. They were like that.
The supermarket's the biggest right now.
Supermarkets are big.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
see
yeah.
online, sorry, what does it mean in specific? Is that
Google.
Just
Yeah.
search.
Yeah, just searching. Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting one in terms of the role of the on-trade. And I think, again, it's just made me think of another. So we're talking loads to people about culture at the moment, and the recognition within brand management about you have to recognise fast and slow culture, because you end up in a space, you know, everyone wants the glamour of the fast culture thing where you get to do an amazing activation and you absolutely hit it from a cultural relevance point of view. We're seeing loads of briefs as an agency right now when people are like, and what's our role in culture? And we're like, what do you mean by culture? And they're like, oh, we don't really know. Can you help us out here? So it's really interesting, and it's not about youth culture and all that jazz. It's genuinely like, how do you make sure that you are speaking in the right places? And a lot of what we talk about is that sense of showing up in fast and slow culture. And I think what we as a group need to do is really stay, like, hang on tightly to the slow culture thing, and therefore the investment that we're making in the on-trade and really showing people how delicious this stuff can look. Although we're not necessarily seeing that's where discovery is, it's definitely where that really significant behaviour change will come from, I think. So it's definitely like it's worth playing both sides of it, because I think that's definitely where the long game will pay off, basically.
I think what really stood, it was really great what you said. I think what really stood out to me is that simplicity. You know, we just talk about functional, because I'm sort of one of those people who always think, oh, I could do this with this. But you being face to face, like, I pretty much feel like I've done a 2-year market research product just on my stall, kind of.
Yeah.
And you just realise how easily people are confused. And even now, if you sort of offer, like, you know, when I'm doing normal coffee, let's say, you go oat milk, there's still this level of confusion. I'm like, bloody hell, like, it's mad. You really have to be, like, crystal clear to get people on board with stuff. So I don't know, I just want to say that. 'Cause it's,
yeah, I totally agree, and
just
it's a really confusing category to navigate for people. So yeah, I agree. Like, it is education, unfortunately, first, which we're all doing a great job of.
And the more unusual your drink is, the more you have to explain. There's some things here that, it's hard. And they're often the most interesting and best ones, sadly.
What do you see as the biggest barrier to getting on trade, on brand, essentially, like on side? Yeah.
I think it's probably easily they'll say customer demand. Like,
Right.
easily on trade will say there's just not the demand for it. I think there's a really interesting intersection, which is like you need to get people to request it. As you say, like moving things up the menu so that it doesn't just appear as like an afterthought. Stop calling things mocktails. Like, you know, all of that sort of like, let's just allow the language of the category to grow up. And I think that will definitely help certainly consumer demand in the on-trade to be able to prove it out in to customers, basically, and to people who are operating in the on-trade. So I think that's one of the biggest barriers for them coming on board. Also, I think, like, apart from your really sophisticated luxury spaces where your mixologists are all about flavour and they know exactly what they're doing and they understand the taste benefit of your product, under that tier, there's a whole bunch of people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. So they can make a really good gin and tonic, but they don't know where to go next. So it's that notion that actually there's a huge amount of education that's needed within like a kind of mid-tier bartender level, which is like, okay, you've asked me for, like, do you have, I really like a gin and tonic, but I'm after something non-alc. What have you got? And they'll be like, nothing. Good luck. We got a beer. Like, that's kind of it. You need to change that conversation so that the bars are able to help move people across and down and shift people around. And we see that just being one of the biggest barriers is actually, like, as I say, the kind of lower tier, so not your amazing mixologists, but that other tier of bartenders who just don't know how to help people navigate it.
On the other extreme where the bartender says, oh, I can make anything you like.
Yeah.
They would never do with alcohol. Saying, oh, just whatever you like.
And that's just as confusing
Yeah.
for the consumer. But the till is the most important thing in a pub. So making the financial case, whether that's, you know, the £800 million that CAM identified last year being lost in restaurants when people have not upgraded from tap water, whether it's talking about the fact that people's behaviour is different. Most people don't drink at lunchtime now, right? But if you've got a pub and you're open at lunchtime, what are people drinking? Why do you have a different lunchtime food menu but not a different lunchtime drink menu? So you can begin to maybe pull into those bits where we know behaviour, where the behaviour is actually quite obvious, which is midweek drinking, lunchtime drinking. If I had more money, then what we'd be doing is putting together all those case study resources for you with all those financial pieces. Vagabond Wine talks about the fact that now they've changed their menu to have more alcohol-free. Group bookings have increased because when people go out as a group, they want to make sure everybody in the group is it has the same time. So they look at the food menu online, they look at the drink menu online, and then they book. So, you know, these are all really important positives to talk to venues about, but I want to be able to put them into a big repository so that you can use them. But there's some case studies, there's some financial figures, there's so much work to do.
Balance is one of those stupid ideas I was chucking out there and made me thought of it anyway. But what about some kind of on-trade package? No idea how it works, where basically you're literally saying, look, you take this, you get this, and that's it. Everything comes as a package.
You can do that with some. Some are tied, and Diageo are being a pain in the arse at the minute as well, and enforcing brands to take venues to take their Gordons and their Tanqueray alcohol-free as part of their alcohol packages. It's actually incredibly bad for the category because if a bartender doesn't like a product, they don't sell a product, do they? So, you know.
And it spoils the whole category if their first experience is with a
And that's what you need me for, to call that out every time I speak on a panel. Anyway, this hasn't stopped them, but at least we're calling it out. Has anyone else got any other questions? Well, thank you very much. What I'm going to do is break open the tables and the stalls now, because I'm aware that you've stood out for a long time. If anyone wants to stay and talk, please do.
Eat some pastries.
Please eat some pastries. I've noticed some people looking at the Jimbo. We've got Jimbo open and some other products open to try. We also have Santander here. Do you want to just do a little wave? So I've forgotten your name again.
It's Layla.
Layla, sorry Layla. Santander have built a new export portal, and they're going to be offering free access to that portal for brands that work with Club Soda, and it's part of our bigger export project that we're also doing to partner with trade. So do go and find Layla and go and have a talk about what the portal is, and we'll be sending more information out soon as well. But I just wanted to let you know that.